Chapter 11. Mikhail slumped against the door in the passenger seat, his breathing shallow and labored. Beneath his ridiculously too small borrowed jacket, deep gashes across his chest were closing at an impossible rate, yet not fast enough. Silver-tinged blood oozed from the wounds, the scent heavy and primal in the confined space of her car. He somehow maintained an aura of dangerous elegance, even in this state, like a wounded jungle cat. "Turn left at the next light," Mikhail directed, grimacing as they hit a pothole. The suspension of her modest sedan protested, and he hissed through clenched teeth, one hand pressed against his worst wound, the other braced against the dashboard. "I have supplies at my secondary residence." Isabella shot him a sideways glance. Secondary residence? How many homes does a werewolf need? The sarcasm felt good. Familiar territory in a world suddenly gone mad. A hint of his customary smirk flickered across his pain-tightened features. One for the public, one for the lichen. Despite everything, a trace of aristocratic amusement colored his tone. "Lichen? Lichen. Lycos. It's another name for what we are," he offered tiredly. Isabella's mind flashed back to the warehouse. The enormous black wolf with silver-tipped fur, the impossible transformation as bones snapped and flesh reformed. The memory played on loop behind her eyes, limbs contorting, fur retracting, human features emerging from an animal face. The sound still echoed in her ears. The wet crunch of reshaping bone, the inhuman groans that became recognizably Mikhail's voice. "It wasn't supposed to happen this way," Mikhail murmured, eyes half closed. His accent, usually almost imperceptible, thickened with pain, hinting at Eastern European origins. "You weren't supposed to find out. Not like this." "What? You had a PowerPoint prepared? 10 fun facts about werewolves?" Isabella snapped, fear making her voice brittle. Her foot pressed harder on the accelerator, the engine's whine increasing pitch. "Were you ever going to tell me your—" She couldn't even finish the sentence. The word werewolf stuck in her throat like a physical object. "I was hoping to avoid it entirely," he admitted, shifting in pain. A low growl escaped him. Too animal-like to be fully human, the sound raising goosebumps along Isabella's arms. Most humans who discover us either end up dead or traumatized. Neither option appealed to me where you were concerned. His eyes, briefly flashing that unnatural amber, lingered on her profile. The casual way he distinguished between humans and whatever he was sent a chill down Isabella's spine. She swallowed hard, her mind cataloguing his words like evidence. Humans, us, the vocabulary of separation. "That, lichen, the other one," she said, taking the left turn as instructed. Her voice sharpened, focusing on facts to ward off panic. The earthy scent of the park they passed mingled with the metallic tang of blood in the car's interior. "It was trying to kill me." "Not just trying. He would have succeeded if I hadn't been tracking him." Mikhail's eyes flashed red momentarily, a reminder of what lurked beneath his handsome human facade. The temperature in the car seemed to drop several degrees, and the air suddenly became heavy with something primal. "That whole pack is killing humans deliberately, breaking our most sacred law. And Gideon is especially dangerous." "Your sacred law is, don't eat people." "How magnanimous of you," Isabella bit out, but there was less venom in her tone than she intended. After all, he had saved her life. Her hands flexed on the steering wheel, remembering how close those savage jaws had come to her throat. the hot breath she'd felt against her skin, the gleam of teeth in moonlight. A silence fell between them as she navigated through quieter streets, where historic bungalows gave way to sleeker modern developments. Dawn painted the city in soft pinks and golds, light filtering through the trees that lined Atlanta's streets, dappling the asphalt with shifting patterns. The juxtaposition of mundane beauty against the supernatural horror she'd witnessed made everything seem slightly unreal, like she was moving through a dream. "Why did you help me?" she finally asked, her voice small in the blood-scented confines of the car. The question had been burning her mind since he'd intervened at the warehouse. Mikhail turned to look at her, his grey-blue eyes fever-bright with pain. "Because you're unrelenting in pursuing justice, even when faced with the terrifying. Because you care more about truth than self-preservation." His voice dropped lower, almost a growl. "And because I couldn't bear the thought of claw marks across your throat." The raw honesty in his tone caught her off guard. Isabella swallowed hard, one hand unconsciously rising to her neck, where triple claw marks would have been carved. Her fingers traced the unmarred skin there, feeling her pulse hammering beneath. A strange question occurred to her. Why do the victims only have 3 marks? Don't you have 4 claws and, a thumb? She caught his half-amused look in her rear-view mirror. Normally 4 large claws and a dew claw in the front. Viktor is missing a finger on his dominant hand. He's sick enough to view it as a signature these days. He straightened slightly, wincing. "Here," he said suddenly, pointing to a modern high-rise that seemed to pierce the morning sky. Sleek and imposing, it matched its owner. "There's underground parking. I'll give you the entry code." She quickly keyed in the numbers. The garage scanner beeped, and the gate lifted silently. She pulled into the cool darkness, following Mikhail's increasingly labored directions to a private elevator. The underground space smelled of concrete and motor oil, and the temperature dropped noticeably as they descended beneath street level. Every movement seemed to cost him. "You need to tell me what's happening," she insisted as she helped him into the elevator, his considerable weight making her stagger. The scent of him, pine, musk, and the metallic tang of blood, enveloped her in the confined space. The door slid shut with a soft pneumatic hiss, sealing them together. All of it. The elevator began its smooth ascent, the only sound the faint hum of machinery and Mikhail's labored breathing. He leaned heavily against the mirrored wall, leaving a smear of silver-flecked blood. His reflection showed a man at the edge of his endurance, somehow maintaining an air of command. "The man responsible for the killings is named Viktor Aldrich," he said, eyes closing briefly in pain. "He's my uncle." Isabella frowned. "How much do you two look alike? Why did our witness give a description that is a dead match for you?" The mirrored walls of the elevator reflected her fear-stricken expression infinitely. Damon with his color-coded files and cheerful demeanor. The thought of him in danger from this savage creature made her stomach clench. "Because he wanted to make as much trouble for me as possible," Mikhail rasped as the elevator doors opened with a soft chime to reveal a minimalist penthouse. Sunlight streamed through floor-to-ceiling windows, illuminating polished concrete floors and sparse, expensive furniture. He took a staggering step forward, then collapsed to his knees. Isabella lunged to catch him, his much larger frame bearing her down until they collapsed on their knees together on the polished floor, her arms around him. his blood soaking into her clothes. His body felt burning hot against hers, far warmer than a human's should be. The heat of him searing through her blouse where their bodies pressed together. He looked at her blearily. He will keep trying to kill you until he succeeds. Why me? She demanded. She gripped his shoulders, helping him stay upright. The scent of his blood was overwhelming now, metallic and earthy with an undertone she couldn't identify. What am I to him? Mikhail's eyes, now entirely red, locked onto hers. The color was inhuman, like fresh blood illuminated from within. A threat, he said simply. You're a threat because you're getting too close, and because I showed interest in you. His head dropped to her shoulder as consciousness fled him, leaving Isabella holding the unconscious human form of a werewolf in her arms. After a few minutes, Mikhail woke, roused again, raising unsteadily from her shoulder. Bathroom, he managed, nodding toward a door off the master bedroom. First aid supplies. The bathroom was a monument to luxury, marble and chrome, gleaming in the morning light. But Isabella had no time to appreciate it. She rummaged through cabinets until she found what looked like a military-grade medical kit, far more comprehensive than any household first aid supplies she'd ever seen. When she returned, Mikhail had removed her borrowed jacket and wrapped a towel around his waist, revealing most of his injuries. 4 deep gashes ran diagonally across his chest, the edges knitting together at an impossible rate. The wounds were crusted with dried blood that glittered strangely in the light, filtering through the floor-to-ceiling windows. Silver, he explained, noticing her stare. It's why I'm healing slower. Gideon wears custom fighting gloves with silver alloy blades embedded in the knuckles. They are specifically designed to deliver silver directly into the bloodstream, preventing regeneration. Viktor teaches his followers how to fight werewolves using our weaknesses against us. Most humans wouldn't know to use silver, but Viktor makes sure his people do. Isabella set the kit beside him on the bed and hesitated, medical supplies in hand. I don't know how to treat this. She gestured at his inhuman wounds. Clean the wounds. Remove any silver particles. The rest, my body will handle. She opened an antiseptic solution and began to clean the gashes. Mikhail hissed through clenched teeth, his eyes momentarily flashing red before returning to their usual storm blue. The muscles in his abdomen tensed under her touch, ridges of strength visible beneath smooth skin. Sorry, she murmured, gentling her touch. She was grateful for her EMT training, which had helped her through college and law school. Don't be. It's necessary. His voice was strained but controlled. There's a pair of tweezers in the kit. You'll need to check for embedded silver fragments. Isabella worked methodically, her focus narrowing to the task at hand. Each time she extracted a tiny silver shard, Mikhail's body would tense, a low growl building in his chest before he suppressed it. The antiseptic scent burned Isabella's nostrils as she extracted another silver fragment from Mikhail's wound. Each time the tweezers connected with the embedded metal, his body tensed beneath her hands, muscles coiling with pain he refused to voice. Only the occasional flash of crimson in his eyes betrayed the agony. Almost done, she murmured, dropping another silvery shard into the metal bowl beside her. The pieces made a delicate tinkling sound, incongruously beautiful for something deadly to his kind. Sweat beaded on Mikhail's forehead, trailing down his temple as he watched her work with predator-sharp focus. "You have steady hands," he observed, voice rougher than usual. For someone who discovered werewolves exist less than 12 hours ago. Isabella dabbed antiseptic solution over the most significant wound. Steady hands come with the job. Juries don't respond well to prosecutors who appear nervous. Her professional mask was slipping back into place, a familiar comfort in this unfamiliar territory. Though I admit, law school didn't cover removing silver fragments from supernatural beings. A ghost of a smile flickered across his face. "No, seems like a significant oversight in your education." He eyed her appraisingly. "Do you know how to set up a blood transfusion?" "Try me." Isabella kept her expression deadpan. It had been years, but she was sure she could still manage. He gave her instructions on how to get into the cabinet with a hidden blood bank, and bore her attempts to get a bag started with stoic complacency. He was so still as he leant against the bathroom wall that she suspected he might have fallen asleep. Finally, satisfied that the line was running the blood correctly, Isabella leaned back and studied him. His wounds were already looking better, the angry red edges beginning to knit together once the silver was removed. Isabella sat back on her heels, surveying her work with clinical detachment that belied the chaos of her thoughts. Sunlight streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows, illuminating his torso. All lean, muscle and smooth skin, marred by the vicious gashes healing before her eyes. "The rate you're healing is—" She shook her head, searching for words. "Convenient," Mikhail supplied, carefully shifting to a seated position. He barely winced now, though the movement would have sent a human to the emergency room. The blood helps accelerate the healing. Something clicked together for Isabella. "Is that why Viktor is draining his victims?" Mikhail's expression darkened. "We're not certain. He didn't start doing that until after I took over Atlanta. Think of blood as fuel. It can be used for many different things by supernatural creatures. Lichens heal fast even without the help of blood. It's one of the few perks of this condition." "Is that what you call it? A condition?" Isabella gathered the bloodied gauze, dropped it into a disposal bag, and tried to appear nonchalant. "Some call it a curse. Others, a gift." His eyes, back to their normal blue-grey, studied her with centuries of weariness behind them. "The oldest among us remember when we were worshipped as gods. The youngest struggle with what they see as a contamination of their humanity." Mikhail shifted against the headboard, his wounds knitting together beneath the antiseptic sheen. The morning light caught in his dark hair, illuminating strands of silver that seemed too premature for his apparent age. "And what do you call it?" Isabella asked, carefully disposing of the last bloodied gauze pad. Her preference for precise questioning remained intact, even as her worldview had shattered around her. A shadow crossed his face, something ancient and feral moving behind his eyes. "A responsibility," he finally said. "One I didn't ask for, but must honor nonetheless." Isabella watched as he tested his mobility, muscles rippling beneath skin torn open hours earlier. The clinical part of her mind noted the accelerated healing with fascination. In contrast, another part of her that she wasn't ready to examine closely appreciated the fluid grace of his movements despite his injuries. "Your uncle doesn't seem to share your sense of responsibility," she observed, closing the first aid kit with a decisive snap. Mikhail's expression hardened. "Viktor believes our kind should rule, not protect. He sees humans as either prey or servants. His gaze softened when it returned to her face. I've spent decades opposing that view. The casual mention of decades from a man who appeared barely 35 sent a fresh wave of disorientation through Isabella. She rose from the bed, needing distance, needing to process. The penthouse's floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic view of Atlanta awakening, traffic flowing, pedestrians hurrying, the mundane world continuing in blissful ignorance of the predators walking among them. "How many of you are there?" she asked, her back to him, voice steady despite the turmoil beneath. "In Atlanta? Close to 80, spread across 3 packs. The bed creaked as he stood, and she could sense him approaching, maintaining a respectful distance. "Worldwide? Thousands! Though our numbers have dwindled since the Industrial Revolution. The silver became too readily available, forests were cleared, and the world grew hostile to creatures that once ruled from shadows." Mikhail's voice was quiet, almost academic, but Isabella caught the melancholy beneath his words. "The Industrial Revolution was our first great culling," he continued, shifting against the pillows she'd propped behind him as his wounds visibly knitted themselves together. Mass-produced silver, railway tracks cutting through ancient territories, cities expanding into what had been wilderness for millennia. His fingers traced the edge of a healing wound, the skin turning from angry red to pink. Isabella watched, transfixed by the impossible healing happening before her eyes. The antiseptic scent hung between them, clinical and sharp against the earthy undertones of his blood. "You speak as though you were there," she said carefully packing away the medical supplies. A shadow of something ancient crossed his face. "Our memories, they pass through bloodlines. The older the wolf, the more we carry of those who came before us." "So, what happened to Viktor?" Isabella asked, closing the first aid kit with a decisive snap. "How does someone go from pack protector to serial killer?" Mikhail's jaw tightened, the muscles working beneath his skin. Power, resentment, the usual human motivations, amplified by the wolf. He sat up straighter, testing his mobility with careful movements. "Viktor believes we've compromised too much, hidden too long. He wants a return to the old ways, wolves as apex predators, humans as prey or servants." "And the killings are what a statement?" Isabella moved to the window, needing distance from the intensity of his gaze, the heat radiating from his body. "A declaration of war," Mikhail corrected. "Against human authority, against me, against anyone who believes in coexistence." He stood with fluid grace that belied his recent injuries, crossing to stand behind her, close but not touching, his reflection appearing in the glass beside hers. "Each victim is chosen to send a message," Mikhail said, his voice dropping to a dangerous rumble. The wounds across his chest had faded to angry pink lines now, his supernatural healing accelerating with the silver removed. "Viktor selects them with surgical precision. People connected to power structures, law enforcement, and those who might expose our existence." Isabella moved to the window, watching Atlanta's morning traffic flow beneath them, oblivious citizens going about their lives. The city looked different now, knowing what hunted in its shadows. "I found records of similar killings dating back decades," she said softly. Understanding dawning. Yes, Mikhail's reflection appeared behind her in the glass, his eyes meeting hers. The first victim worked for the city planning office. She had flagged unusual property acquisitions around historic park territories. The second was a forensic technician who noticed anomalies in blood samples. He stepped closer, his heat radiating against her back. Each death is a message to those who might see too much. And a message to you, Isabella added, turning to face him. Challenging your authority as alpha, marking your territory. Mikhail looked at her sharply. You understand pack dynamics surprisingly well. I understand power plays. They're not so different in courtrooms. She crossed her arms. But why me? I wasn't close to exposing anything supernatural until Viktor's kills put me on his trail. Mikhail's expression darkened, something ancient and predatory moving behind his eyes. Because I watched you, and he watched me watching you. The admission hung between them, heavy with implication. Isabella felt her pulse quicken. You've been following my career, she said, not a question. Since your first major case. He moved to the window beside her. The city spread below them like a map. A young prosecutor who refused to plea bargain despite political pressure, who worked 80-hour weeks to build cases others deemed unwinnable. His voice carried a note of admiration. You pursue justice with the same single-minded focus as a wolf on a hunt. Isabella absorbed this, unsure whether to feel flattered or disturbed by his surveillance. So, Viktor targeted me to get to you. The words came out measured, her mind assembling the puzzle pieces. She moved away from him, needing space to process. Her blood-stained clothes felt suddenly heavy, a physical reminder of how drastically her world had changed overnight. It's more complex than that, Mikhail said, his voice softer now. He winced as he shifted position. Viktor doesn't just want to hurt me. He wants to expose us. The killings are calculated. Isabella turned back to face him. So, I was next on his list anyway. You were just... what? Keeping an eye on things? The thought of being watched, even protected, without her knowledge, sent a chill through her despite the warmth of the penthouse. At first, yes. Mikhail met her gaze directly, unflinching. I track anyone who might stumble upon our world. But, with you... He paused, something vulnerable flickering across his face. It became more than surveillance. The admission hung between them, laden with implications neither seemed ready to address. Isabella felt heat rise to her cheeks, her heartbeat accelerating in a way that had nothing to do with fear. Her eyes dropped momentarily from his intense gaze before rising again with renewed determination. She refused to show weakness, even as her body betrayed her reaction. Isabella paced the length of the window, her reflection ghosting alongside the Atlanta skyline. These other wolves you mentioned, the ones in Atlanta, where do they stand in all this? She was already mapping potential allies and enemies, a habit too ingrained to abandon even in these extraordinary circumstances. Most remain neutral for now. Some support my protection of humans. Others secretly sympathize with Viktor's vision of returning to dominance. Mikhail watched her movement with predator-sharp eyes. Power shifts are dangerous times in pack politics, Mikhail continued, his voice taking on a lecturer's cadence as he moved carefully to stand up. The wounds on his chest had faded to angry pink lines, the supernatural healing process fascinating to watch. When an alpha is challenged, everything becomes unstable. Alliances shift, old grievances resurface, and neutrality becomes almost impossible to maintain. Isabella watched him echo her pacing, the predatory grace returning to his movements as his body healed. Sunlight streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows, casting his profile in gold, highlighting the handful of silver threads in his dark hair that seemed incongruous with his apparent youth. Is that what's happening now? A power shift? Mikhail paused by the window, looking out over Atlanta's skyline. Viktor is forcing one, he said, his reflection in the glass revealing a momentary flash of crimson in his eyes. By killing humans so brazenly, he's not just challenging me, he's threatening our entire way of life. The packs have survived for centuries through discretion and adaptation. Hiding in plain sight, Isabella murmured, joining him at the window. She stood close enough to feel the heat radiating from his body, but carefully maintained the small distance between them. Precisely. Mikhail turned to face her, his expression grave. After the Industrial Revolution, we learned to become part of human society rather than prey upon it. We established businesses, acquired property, and created identities that could withstand scrutiny. His mouth quirked in a humorless smile. We became civilized, by necessity, if not by nature. Despite his youthful appearance, Isabella studied his face, seeing centuries of adaptation in his eyes. And Viktor wants to undo all that? Return to... what? Open hunting of humans? Viktor believes we've compromised too much, become too domesticated. The disgust in Mikhail's voice was palpable. He views humans as either prey or servants, nothing more. Mikhail's voice carried a weight of centuries, and his disgust at his uncle's philosophy was evident in the hard line of his jaw. The silver-edged wounds across his chest had faded to angry pink lines now, his supernatural healing accelerating with every passing minute. "Except I'm neither," Isabella replied, lifting her chin with the same defiance that had carried her through countless courtroom battles. The morning light streaming through the penthouse windows caught in her dark hair. "And that's what makes me dangerous to him." Mikhail studied her face, something like admiration flickering across his features. "Yes, you refuse categorization. Viktor doesn't understand humans who stand their ground." He moved closer, his movements fluid, despite recent injuries. "You were investigating him before you knew what he was, following the evidence, building a case. Humans who pursue predators. They disrupt his worldview." A soft electronic chime interrupted their conversation. Mikhail tensed immediately, his posture instantly shifting from wounded to ready to attack. Isabella watched as he inhaled deeply, his nostrils flaring slightly. "It's Katerina," he said, relaxing marginally. "She's safe." Before Isabella could ask questions, the elevator doors slid open with a soft pneumatic hiss. A tall woman with red hair drawn back in a severe ponytail stalked into the penthouse. She moved with the same predatory grace as Mikhail, though hers was more overtly dangerous, less carefully contained. Her eyes, a startling green that seemed to glow in the morning light, swept the room and narrowed when they landed on Isabella. "You're bleeding," Katerina said to Mikhail, her voice carrying a faint Eastern European accent thicker than his. She ignored Isabella completely, striding toward Mikhail with purpose. "Who attacked you?" "Gideon," Mikhail confirmed. "Silver-laced claws." Katerina swore. in what sounded like Russian, finally acknowledging Isabella with a cold glance. "And this is why? The little prosecutor. You risked yourself for this human?" The possessive tone and evident concern made Isabella's stomach tighten. Girlfriend, she thought. The woman's beauty was undeniable. High cheekbones, flawless skin, and a lithe physique showcased in expensive dark clothing. The easy familiarity with which she approached Mikhail, reaching out to grab his jaw without hesitation and study his wounds, suggested intimacy. Isabella felt foolish for thinking someone as good-looking and successful as Mikhail Volkov wouldn't have an equally stunning girlfriend. "She was Viktor's target," Mikhail replied, his voice taking on an edge that Isabella hadn't heard before. "Gideon would have killed her." "So?" Katerina challenged, her accent thickening with emotion. "Humans die every day. You are Alpha? Your safety must always come first." Isabella bristled at being discussed as if she weren't present. "I'm standing right here," she said. "And I didn't ask to be saved. Although if she were being honest, she'd kind of appreciated it." Katerina turned to her fully now, eyes flashing an angry emerald momentarily. "No, you just walked alone into a trap because you couldn't leave well enough alone. Brainless arrogance like all the rest of City Hall." "Katerina," Mikhail said, the single word carrying unmistakable disapproval. "Miss Santos is under my protection now." Katerina stiffened as if he'd slapped her, then inclined her head slightly, almost imperceptibly. "As you wish, Alpha." Her tone made it clear that she was displeased by this turn of events. Isabella made a mental note to watch her back around this woman. After another moment of glacial disapproval, Katerina stirred into motion. "Let me check the rest of your wounds," she ordered. Damon grimaced but raised his shirt. The redhead looked closely at the bandages and the cuts and lacerations that hadn't required bandaging. She even peeled back the corner of a bandage to assure herself that everything was fresh and dry beneath. Satisfied that his wounds had been adequately treated, she finally glanced over her shoulder at Isabella, expression carefully neutral. "Forgive my directness. Mikhail's safety is my most important responsibility." Something about the formality of the address and the deference in her posture made Isabella reassess her initial assumption. Not girlfriend, employee, or whatever the lichened equivalent was. "You're his security," Isabella said, understanding dawning. "His enforcer, yes," Katerina confirmed. "I ensure the Alpha's safety and enforce pack law." Her tone was professional now, though the chill remained. A task made difficult when he decides to face one of Viktor's enforcers alone. "I wasn't alone," Mikhail said, a hint of amusement in his voice despite the tension. "I had a DA with a gun." Katerina made a sound that might have been a suppressed laugh or a scoff. "Oh yes, very reassuring." Isabella was suddenly very aware of her disheveled appearance and the absurdity of her situation. Her clothes were stiff with dried blood, her hair a tangled mess, and she was standing in a luxury penthouse with two werewolves debating her relative value in a fight to the death. "I should go," she said, needing space to process. The events of the night, the warehouse, the transformation, the revelations about a hidden world existing alongside her own, were crashing down on her with renewed force. "I need to check on Damon, make sure he's safe." Mikhail stepped toward her, concern evident in his expression. "Viktor is still out there. You're not safe alone." I'm not staying here, Isabella replied firmly, though exhaustion pulled at her limbs. I need time to think, and I will be expected at work. Katerina watched the exchange with sharp eyes, assessing. I'll have someone watch her apartment and another keep an eye on her at work, she said to Mikhail, though her gaze remained on Isabella. Discreetly, I don't need, Isabella began. It's not negotiable, Katerina cut her off. You've seen too much now. You're either under our protection or you're a liability. The words were delivered without malice. They were simply factual. Isabella met the other woman's gaze, recognizing the steel behind her eyes. The same unflinching commitment to duty that Isabella herself brought to her cases. Fine, Isabella conceded, too exhausted to argue further when she already knew it was futile. But I'm still leaving. I need clean clothes and about 12 hours to accept that werewolves are real and running half of Atlanta's real estate. A ghost of a smile touched Katerina's lips. Only a third. The vampires have another third. She's joking, Mikhail said quickly, seeing Isabella's expression. Mostly. The Fae have made some important acquisitions recently. Isabella closed her eyes briefly, gathering the last of her composure. She could feel the beginning of a migraine forming behind her eyes. I'm going to pretend I didn't hear that until I've had sleep and coffee. She moved toward the elevator, every muscle aching from the night's ordeal. Mikhail followed, keeping a respectful distance. I'll have a car take you home. No need, I can drive mine. Your car has blood all over the interior, he reminded her gently. It would be difficult to explain if you were pulled over. Let me have it cleaned, and I'll have it dropped off at your office later today. Isabella conceded with a nod, too tired to argue further and oddly thankful he had people, or for all she knew, house elves, who knew how to get blood out of leather. She couldn't afford a new car for a few more years. As the elevator doors opened, she turned back to face them. Mikhail, with his partially healed wounds, Katerina, with her watchful green eyes. Two predators in human form, their power barely contained beneath civilized veneers. I'll contact you when I've checked on Damon, she said to Mikhail. And then, we need to talk about how to stop these killings. Of course, Mikhail agreed, something like admiration flickering in his eyes. Rest first. The hunt can wait a few hours. The elevator doors closed, leaving Isabella alone with her reflection in the mirrored walls. She stared back with eyes that had seen too much to ever return to blissful ignorance.